Hey everyone, welcome to the Be Bold, Make Waves podcast, a show bringing you inspiring stories of women who are growing and scaling their business. I'm your host, Laura Comark, a website and tech integration specialist who works with online business owners who love their work and not their website. Join me as we have incredible conversations about business, mindset, productivity, and of course, the website and tech behind the business. Let's go ahead and dive in to this week's episode. Hello and welcome to this week's show. For those of you who don't already know me, I'm Laura Comark, Evergreen System and Funnel Integration expert for coaches and consultants who love their work but not their tech. My guest today is Andria Singletary. She's a wife, mom of two, life and business coach for mompreneurs, and the host of the Mama Turned Mompreneur podcast. She's passionate about supporting mompreneurs with building a business that fits their current season of life and doesn't rely on social media lead gen. Andria, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about how you got to where you are today?
My mompreneur journey started after I became a mom. I became a mom April 2020, height of the pandemic. And prior to becoming a mom, I was a preschool director. So worked in the early childhood field for well over 10 years. And basically while I was on maternity leave, my job shut down. So became a stay-at-home mom unexpectedly. But it was definitely what I wanted. I always knew that when I started having kids, I wanted to be home with them. So worked out perfectly that way. But as I started this new mom journey and it was during the pandemic and everything, I just felt really lonely and I was like, I need something for myself. And so I started a mom blog to try to build like a community and everything and really loved building my website. It was like my first time building a website. And I was like, oh, maybe I can turn this into something. So basically went down the Google rabbit hole, discovered virtual assistants, and started my virtual assistant business. It was called the Savvy VA Mama. And fun fact, I started it while I was 12 weeks pregnant with my daughter, and I had a 1 year old running around. So that was a lot of fun. But as I continued, working as a virtual assistant and literally doing all of the things that you can do as a virtual assistant. So, web design, blog copywriting, general admin, wearing all of these hats. My business was growing, but I was getting burnt out. And so I realized I needed to niche down and to niche down in something that was really going to accommodate my life as a soon to be mom of two. And so again, searching on Google, I discovered podcast management. And at that time, I was an avid podcast listener and like always wondered who helped women get their podcasts out into the world. And so I decided to take Lauren Wrighton's podcast manager program. Mind you, I'm like super pregnant while doing this. My goal was to finish the course before I had my daughter, which I finished it literally a week before I went into labor. But after I had my daughter, a couple of weeks later, signed my first podcast management client and basically just went with it. I really loved supporting other women. And what I found like the biggest disconnect was that these women were creating these amazing podcasts, but they weren't connected to their businesses. And so I kind of made it my mission to support women. They were mostly mom business owners with actually using their podcast as an effective part of their marketing strategy, not treating it as just the separate thing. And so I found that when my clients applied the strategies that I taught them, they were literally able to funnel their listeners into their paid offers and programs. Like their podcast not only brought in new leads, but nurtured these leads and then converted them into these paid offers. And so I kind of just was doing that. And then I literally had clients telling me that I was their coach and asking me for coaching on this. And I'm like, okay, something's coming up here. Maybe I need to explore this coaching thing. And so I decided to add on, another part of my business where I offer life and business coaching for mom business owners, really helping to them to build a business that fits their current season of life, that makes sense based on their current time and capacity that they have available, but also allowing them to still be the present moms that they want to be. So that's kind of my journey.
Oh my goodness. I love that story so much, and I can relate to it so much because I was working a corporate job when I was pregnant with my first child. And I, at that point, worked from home kind of before it was a thing.
hmm
And I had been working remote for this large company. There was like two of us in a company of 500 that worked remote. So not a lot of people knew I did that. And I felt like I had a really secure corporate job. I'd been there 8 years, all that fun stuff, 3 years remote. And they knew I was pregnant. And I got the call when I was about 4 or 5 months pregnant. And at 8 a.m. one day from HR, and they said, your position's been eliminated.
Oh my
And I was just
gosh.
like, I'm pregnant. They're like, you'll
Yeah.
figure it out. So I kind of got thrown into being a stay-at-home mom, which
hmm
wasn't really in the plan. No longer having an income, which my husband was had about a year prior to that, had started a new business, had done a complete career change.
hmm
He's always been an entrepreneur forever and was building up a new business. And so my job was kind of supporting us. And all of a sudden that was just pulled out from under us. And so I was kind of struggling with that whole like mom, new mom once the baby was born, loneliness, trying to like
Mhm.
start up a business, not really sure what I was going to do or, and it was 2015 back then. It was so different in the online space than it is now. But
Yeah.
yeah, I can relate so much to that. And like the not expecting to be home with the children,
Mhm.
even though it's amazing. I got to be home with my children when they were babies, but it was definitely a struggle, like kind of an identity crisis almost.
Mhm.
Something I wasn't prepared for mentally in
Yeah.
leaving the workforce and then like starting my own business. So I love, I'm going to go back to what some of the things you had talked about. I love how you're able to take when people have their podcast and be like, here's how we can apply more strategy to it that becomes a whole part of your entire marketing strategy. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so basically, one of the biggest things I work with my clients on is getting clear on like what is your goal? What do you ultimately want listeners to do after they listen to an episode? And so we get really clear on that. So whether that is moving them over to their email list so they can nurture them more, or if they want to convert listeners directly to specific offers. And so we really like when planning out podcast content, we, in a sense, reverse engineer. So we start with the end in mind. And just taking that approach has really given my clients like just so much clarity in how to effectively create podcast content that is going to get their listeners to do things. And one of the other things we really work on too is not waiting until the very end of the episode to promote whatever it is. We do that at the very beginning because we know we have people's attention right at the start of the episode. So I'm like, let's just get that out the way. And then you can dive into, the actual content of the episode. So just making those changes and really, again, just kind of shifting your mindset, how you look at your podcast, it's helped my clients so much. It's like it doesn't have to be the separate thing. It can really be another way that you market your business, another way that you connect with your community and everything. And so when they look at it differently, they like now my clients, when they go into planning out their monthly content, they're like, okay, this is the offer I'm focusing on this month. And they like are really clear on what type of episodes they're going to create. It just makes the whole process easier and it doesn't feel like it's another thing to do.
Oh, I love that so much. Yeah, when I started my podcast, it was more of just like, I don't want to blog.
hmm
I don't want to just hop on a bunch of coffee chats. And I love chatting with people. I love connecting. I love meeting new
Yeah.
people. Even though I am an introvert, I get that energy from, you know, sitting quietly and reading a book. I definitely get drained from it, but I do love connecting people. And I've made some amazing friendships in the online space with people that I've gone to meet in real life at events and retreats and things. And so I have just really loved when I created my podcast, the idea was to do interviews mostly instead
Yeah.
of it being more of like a solo episodes. I do solo episodes as well, but for the most part, it's my connection strategy to have a reason to reach out and build my network and just meet some
Mhm.
more even amazing women and introduce them to my audience, my community. So,
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's a really great way to use your podcast too. I know like I'm an introvert too, and I have found that the interviews really allow me to build deeper connections with other women in my community because I'm not the type to go to a virtual networking event. It's just very overwhelming for me. But being able to have these one-on-one conversations, like you were saying, it allows me to get to know the guests better and just building that referral network and just having other business owners to be connected to and to lean on and different things. I really like using my podcast that way too. So I totally get
it's
it.
so fun. Like
Yes.
I think it was about 2 years ago. I just did a ton of coffee chats and nothing ever happened with them. They felt like really awkward. And I was like,
Yes.
I don't enjoy this. I'm going to just start a podcast and just chat with people. And it's way more fun.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. I want to talk to you a little bit about how your business kind of revolves your beliefs and how you do things around not relying on social media for lead generation. Can we talk a little bit about that? Because
Yeah.
I think this is gonna be a really fun conversation.
Yeah, so I last year, at the start of last year, excuse me, I was trying to be on all of the platforms. I was on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, doing all of the things, and it got me nowhere. I was just burnt out and drained, and I've never been a huge social media person to begin with. And so I'm like, why am I trying to force myself to do something that doesn't even feel aligned to me? And I was like, I have this podcast, just focus on the podcast, like stop making it complicated. And I really just decided to focus on using my podcast as my main way of creating content, but I do repurpose it for
Mhm.
other platforms. So like for blogging, especially like going into this year, I've really been actually changing the format of my show notes to be more of like a blog style and leveraging Pinterest. And just within a month, I've seen so much traffic go to my website. Like literally people visit my website daily. Last year, I didn't have any of that. And so I really am all about simplifying how you create content, but doing it in a way that actually feels good to you, where you actually enjoy showing up. I look forward to recording my podcast episodes. Like, if I could every weekend, I would just record podcast episodes. But I don't look forward to creating content for Instagram. I dread it. I dread having to open that app. Now, don't get me wrong. I love DM conversations and I encourage my listeners to send me messages on Instagram. And I've been able to have some amazing conversations that way. But that's how I mostly use social media. I'm not really big on creating content. Like I'll show up stories here and there. Like I've given up on trying to consistently post in stories. I've switched to the 9 grid so I don't have to post to my feed. But I've found that leaning into how I actually enjoy showing up and
Mhm.
showing up in a way where I actually thrive, where you really get to know me, my personality comes through, it doesn't feel forced or anything. That has worked more in my favor for building my business than trying to force myself to post on social media. So I think it just really boils down to like, do you actually enjoy how you're creating content? Because if you don't, it's going to come through the content you're creating. It's going to feel forced. Like your audience is going to feel it and that's going to impact your results. Like it's not allowing people to really see the real you, like what it is to like to work with you and get to know your personality and stuff like that. And so that's kind of like why I moved away from leaning so much on social media. Plus, I mean, you hear people's accounts getting shut down and hacked and I think one of my friends on Instagram today, she's said that she wasn't able to like post anything and just it was a craziness. And it's like you don't know. And then all the people complaining about engagement being low and all of that. But I'm like, well, I see people coming to my website daily. Like I know I'm getting new leads. Like I have people getting on my email list and different things. Like I'm not worried about it. So like when people are complaining about all the things going wrong on Instagram, I'm like, okay, it's not a big deal to me.
I can relate to that so much. I have this like love-hate relationship with Instagram. It just does not
Yeah.
work for my brain. I
Yeah.
can't figure it out. And so years ago, like one of the first things I outsourced in my business was hiring Lizzie Matson with Wild Feather Co. She was on, I think it was episode 2 or 3. I think it was episode 2 of the podcast. And
Yeah.
she used to do my Instagram. And for me, I was like, I don't have to do anything. And I just know like it's happening.
Yeah.
Someone else is taking care of it. I feel good because I feel like I'm showing up consistently and not having to
Yeah.
do it. And so she did that for a number of years. And then I ended up taking the content and being able to evergreen as much as I could. And then she actually
Mhm.
now offers VIP days where she will create like just about 6 months worth of evergreen content. We actually just
Oh,
finished it last week and I'm in the
cool.
process of getting it all. So I have all new content and I'm
Hmm.
excited about it because for me, it feels good to me that I didn't have to like create it,
Yes.
but it's in alignment. It's all my offers. It's the right, like the copy's in
Mhm.
alignment. It's amazing stuff. And then I can go and post that. And then I've gotten better about stories. It's still really, it's a struggle. Like things move behind images and things.
Yeah.
And I'm always like, why are you doing this? I'm trying to move this little like heart icon-y thing. And it
Yeah.
just really frustrates me. But so yeah, I can relate to like the struggle of not enjoying it and finding
Hmm.
a way around that. And then the other thing I've just been such a big proponent of, mostly for setting up with my clients, but also trying to, preach what I'm
Yeah.
what I'm saying to all of them is doing like evergreen email sequences.
Mm.
So that again, like taking the best content and being able to repurpose that over and over again. Because the thing I find is a lot of my clients are building email lists, but then they're not nurturing that list. So I feel like there's a lot of talk about grow your list, grow your list, grow your list. But then a lot of people grow the list and they never email, which like guilty. I did
Yes.
it. I did it. We all did it. It's okay. It's a safe space. We can talk about this. But having an evergreen system in place where then as you're doing that visibility, whether it's getting on podcasts or speaking at summits or whatever it is that you're doing, and being able to know that once people hit that list, they're going to get your best content.
Yes, yes. It's so funny you brought that up because a mutual friend, Nicole Kepik, she shared how you basically supported her with that. And it actually was how it led to her end up being a guest on my podcast because I was going through her evergreen funnel and everything, which I thought it was genius. And so yeah, that's another thing I'm leveraging too. I'm building out my funnels and all of that. Just because, especially as a mom, the more that you can automate and have working for you without you having to actually show up makes a world of a difference. So I definitely love that. And I think it's so important.
Yeah, I mean, having little kids at home, you never know. And even like mine, I just got to like that next stage in my life where
Yeah.
both kids are in school. This started in August. Like it still feels new and exciting.
Yeah.
I mean, last week on Wednesday, we got the call that my daughter had a temperature and was in the office. And that was Wednesday. So she was home Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. And I had a lot of things planned those days that did not happen. And that's okay. I give myself
Mhm.
grace. I can only do what I can do. And when I know that at least I know the people now getting on my list are being nurtured. The people who've been on it for a
Mhm.
while, they haven't heard from me in a couple weeks. And that's okay.
Yes.
I'm trying.
Yeah.
So, oh, I love that. What would you say that some of the best marketing strategies for mompreneurs are?
So podcasting, of course, but I know that podcasting is not for everyone, or at least like having your own, but podcast guesting, so like I'm doing right now, is such a great marketing strategy, especially when you're very strategic about it, making sure you're getting in front of your ideal audience, having those key topics already mapped out, so that way you are again funneling people somewhere. And I always recommend like directing them to like a free resource to get them on your email list. So that way, you know, they're getting into your world. And people are more prone to opt into something free when it's a colder audience versus you trying to immediately sell them into something. So yes, podcast guesting and other collaborations. So like speaking at virtual summits, especially most of those are pre-recorded. So you get to, you know, do that on your own time and everything. Participating in bundles to grow your email list. And like you were saying, nurturing that email list and everything. But I think those are really great strategies for moms because it doesn't require you to be on all the
Yep.
time. You're not having to post and engage and all of that. It's like kind of a one and done thing. And the nice thing, like even with podcast guesting, it's evergreen content. So new people will find that years to come after you've recorded it and everything.
Oh, I love that. And I couldn't agree more. Like it's having that content. And again, like you're also building relationships with new
Hmm.
people, and then you're getting in front of their audience. And that's people continue to download those podcasts and listen to them. So I think that's an excellent marketing strategy for because
Yes.
it's hard to raise a family and build a business. It's a juggle.
Yes, it definitely is.
Why do you feel that a social media reliant visibility strategy is really just not that sustainable for mom business owners?
So, kind of like we've been discussing, I would say the biggest thing is that if you are just posting on social media, like to stay top of mind, you have to create a lot of content
Mm.
because social media content, the shelf life is like 24 hours. And if you think about it, you may have these amazing posts that are like buried down, and people aren't going to scroll down to those old posts. A lot of times they don't go past like the first six or nine posts. And so it's just not that effective for you. Now, with evergreen content like a podcast or a blog, those things are searchable. People are literally typing in Google certain questions. And if you leverage SEO, your content can come up. And this can be stuff that you posted a month ago, a year ago, and it just keeps working for you. I've had people literally find my podcast and binge all of the episodes, and I think 130 something episodes in. I literally had someone who ended up working with me, a coaching client, when she found my podcast. I think at that time I was at 100 episodes. She binged all 100 episodes like in a weekend. So you're not going to get that on social media. But even better is that I didn't have to do anything new. Like this was content that was already there. She discovered my podcast and she liked the first episode and she just kept going and going and going. And so it's content that'll continue to work for you. Even when you can't show up, even when you can't, you know, post to social media and different things like that. And so I think that's really important as a mom because we can't control when our kids get sick. You know, we can't control these different things. And it's like, oh man, the kids are sick. I didn't get to put that post out. Like, and then you're feeling guilty because you're not putting out more content to reach your ideal clients and everything. And so it just takes a lot of that pressure off of you to have to show up and post and engage and different things like that.
Absolutely. So, for someone in our audience listening who is wondering, like, I would maybe they've been thinking about starting a podcast and they're listening to us right now and they're like, I'm going to do it. What would you say are the first steps that they should take?
So, really get clear on your goal of the podcast. What are you ultimately using it to do? Are you using it to drive people to your email list? Are you focusing primarily on trying to bring in new leads, nurture them, and convert them directly from the podcast? And it can be both goals, right? Like they both are in alignment with each other. But just getting really clear on that because that's going to drive the type of content you create. So if your podcast is purely for you to highlight your expertise and sign clients directly from your podcast, then you need to be creating more solo episodes than you do interviews. Now, if you're using it as a way to network, then go ahead, all the interviews you want to do. Just again, really thinking about like, what do you want this podcast to ultimately do? The next thing I would say is do not get caught up on the tech will really leave you stuck if you are trying to have all of the bells and whistles. You don't need all of that. You can keep it really simple, whether that is just ordering a microphone off of Amazon or recording in the voice notes app on your phone and starting that way. The biggest thing is that you want to get started because if you don't get started, you're not going to actually make it to, 50 episodes, 100 episodes, different things like that. Your podcast is going to grow and evolve as you learn more, as you get more comfortable with creating content in this type of format, as your business grows and everything. I mean, I've already shared, I've gone through so many different things as a mompreneur, started out as a VA, now I'm doing coaching. And so your podcast will grow and change with you, especially as you get to know your audience more and you just get clarity on those different things in your business. So the main thing is to get started and not allowing, oh, I need to do a video podcast. I need to have this type of microphone and all these different things. No, you don't. Just keep it simple.
I love that advice. What are your thoughts on like the video versus not doing video? For mine, as you know, because we're both on video right now, I repurposed mine to YouTube. Full disclosure, I'm very behind, like because that got pushed down to the bottom of the priority
Yes.
list as long as it was getting produced and, put out in all the audio places,
Hmm.
actually producing because it's a separate production.
Yeah, it definitely is.
So, do you
Yeah.
have any thoughts on that? Because I've also heard this is kind of going to another question, but I've
Yeah.
heard some talk a while back when I was listening to an audio summit that was talking about how YouTube's coming out with podcasting
Hmm.
something or another, and I haven't gone back and tried to research that. So those are my questions.
Yeah. So honestly, when it comes to video podcasts, whether or not you do it, I would say it depends on your audience and also what your niche is. I've always found that with video podcasts, unless you're actually teaching me something, I don't really need the video component. But I'm saying that I'm a busy mama. I
Hmm.
don't have time to look at a video, but I can listen to you. I
Hmm.
can put in my earbuds while I'm washing the dishes and listen to you, on Apple Podcasts. So I think just really understanding your audience and how they consume content can help you make that decision. Also, like again, if your niches is where you are demonstrating something in your videos, I think it would make sense then. But I also know too that sometimes, like especially if you have like a celebrity guest or something like that, people may want that video component as well. So I think it's just ultimately up to you. I don't feel that it's necessary to have a successful podcast. And then to touch on the YouTube thing, I post my podcast to YouTube. I just have a thumbnail and people can listen to the audio. And I think it is important to add in that, especially since Google Podcast is going away, I think in April. So everything is kind of being pushed over to YouTube. So you don't have to have video. You can just create a thumbnail that has your branding, your cover art, says new episode, and keep it simple like that.
Simple. Yeah, because I had heard that like one of the reasons to even, just put the audio on there is because
Yeah.
they will search because YouTube's
Hmm.
searchable,
Yeah.
just like how your blog is. So that was kind of something that it's been like sitting in the back of my mind. I'm like, I need to it's on the to-do list. It's just not that high.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you can still, like I said, you can still add your audio to it. You just create a thumbnail picture for it. So yeah.
I love that. What is some of the like what's your favorite podcasting tech in terms of like the apps you're using for it?
Let's see. So for recording, I absolutely love Zencaster. I
Mhm.
use it for both solo episodes and interviews. It's really easy to use, but what I love the most about it and why I pay $20 a month for it is that literally it uploads all of the audio files to a Google Drive folder for me so that it's organized. I'm not having to remember to download anything or move anything over here, anything like that. And so yeah, I just pay for that convenience. It's like one less thing I have to think about.
Ah, the beauty of automations.
Yes.
And then where do you host your podcast or recommend that your clients host their podcasts?
I love Captivate.
Mm.
They have so many great features. So one of my favorite features is that for like your episode description, basically you can create a template. So like I have one for solo episodes and interviews because what I include in the description is slightly different. So again, kind of like automating to a certain extent of like not having to retype out the same things over and over again. So I have kind of like a skeleton of like what I typically include in my episode description. So that's one of the cool things. They also allow you to make podcast playlists. So I've been doing that more, kind of like using it as a freebie to drive more people to my
Ooh.
email list. And then they have a lot of great features for like supporting you like with monetizing your podcast. So like even, adding in ads if you want to do any ads, like even if you're promoting your own stuff on your podcast, they make it very easy to do. And their customer support is so amazing. Like they're very responsive and they have a lot of like educational things too. So they're always hosting like webinars and different things to try to keep everyone abreast on like the latest trends in podcasting.
Oh, I love that. I have not heard of them before, so I will check them out. I use Buzzsprout.
Buzzsprout is a good one too. I like them as well.
I like that they integrate with Ophonics, which was
Yes.
I when I was doing like virtual assistant tech VA work, there was a client that I worked for and I did her podcast production for about
Mhm.
4 years. And that's how when it was like, okay, I'm gonna start my own podcast. I'm like, I already know how to do all the things.
Yes.
And like it feels a little like old school technology because like I'm using GarageBand to edit things.
Hey, keep it simple.
Exactly. And it is. It's super
Yeah.
simple, but GarageBand to edit things. And then I knew to run everything through Ophonics to just make the audio sound good. Because I asked
That's
her once, I was
good.
like, why do I listen to a podcast that's not hers? And it would be like really quiet. So I turn up the volume.
Yeah.
And then the
That
next episode
is,
comes on and it's yelling at me. And I'm
yes.
like, ah.
Yes. I love that you learned that before you started your podcast because that's like one of my biggest pet peeves. I like want to send people an email. Can you run it through Alphonic, please?
And that's I remember when I first like launched my podcast, someone had said to me, they were like, "Wow, it sounds really good. I wasn't expecting the
Yeah.
sound quality would be so good when, you're just starting out." I'm like, "Well, I do know what I'm doing, and the magic is all in
Yes.
Ophonics." And then I
Literally.
discovered that they started integrating with Buzzsprout, and I'm like, "Well, I guess I don't
That's
need to pay for both
cool.
now." So you have to
Yeah.
it's like another little like upgrade per month, but
Mhm.
it runs it through all automatically.
Wow, that's awesome. I didn't know they added that feature. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's a cool little integration. I still because I remember I had a friend who had reached out. She's like, "Oh, I recorded this presentation for a summit, and there's like this weird buzzing noise in the background." I'm like, "Go run it through Ophonics.
Mhm.
It's gonna
Yes.
be." She's like, auto who to what?" I'm like, "Ophonics. It's
Yes.
magic."
Yes, I like Auphonic better than Descript's studio sound. I don't know if
Mm.
you've ever played around with that, but their studio sound, it can really mess up your audio. Like you have to get the setting just right. But Auphonic, literally, you just run it through. You don't have to really adjust anything. Yeah.
No. I have not played around that much with Descript. I got like the free trial and I was kind of breaking my brain trying to learn a new piece and I was like, I don't
Yes.
need this. I have all the other pieces I need that to do these things. When I edit my video, I'm doing it in iMovie and
Yeah.
I know how to do it.
Yes, I
So,
feel like that's a much better way to do it than use the script. I never really like that. It's like you're editing a Word doc, but it's like if you edit, like if you delete something, then it might make it sound a little choppy because technically, the waveform, it's connected. So yeah, I don't like the script.
I couldn't figure it out. It was too much for my brain, which again, I'm a techie person, but like that was too
Yeah.
much for me. But hey, I appreciate all my friends who love it and
Yes.
use it all the time. I'm like, good for you. It's just I'm too dinosaur for Descript.
No, you're not. If you're using GarageBand, you're actually very advanced.
It feels very old school. Like it literally the only thing I know how to do on GarageBand is edit the podcast. That's it. I don't know how to do anything else. Anyway, what would you say? I want to talk a little bit more about like, being a mom and building a business and kind of some of the struggles there because I feel like it's not always talked about.
Yeah.
How do you find you're able to build a sustainable business in part-time hours?
Honestly, I have simplified my offers. I have set things up in a way so that I don't have to always be on calls and different things like that. Um, the biggest thing I use is Voxer. My clients love it. We do coaching via Voxer and everything. And it works great because my clients are other moms too. And so being able to send a message via Voxer is a lot easier than having to get dressed and get ready and get on a call. And, hopefully the kids are napping and whatnot. And I know for like my kids, if they see me get on Zoom, they're gonna come start talking, saying hi, asking questions and different things like that. So excuse me. So I would say that was the biggest thing, like really just looking at what I have, truly have like the time and capacity for and how I can best serve my clients without it requiring even more of me.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one thing, but also just learning to ask for help. I've really learned how to lean on my husband. And so Saturdays are like my day where I just focus on myself and business. He takes the kids and they do whatever they're going to do. I don't even get involved. I'm like, it's just one day. You want to feed them cereal all day? That is totally fine. But I get that day where I can just really knock out most of my work, whether that is creating podcast episodes or, getting some client work done or different things like that. Just having that uninterrupted time to work, and where I just literally have to worry about myself, making sure I eat and go to the bathroom and that kind of stuff. It has made a world of a difference in me being able to actually build a business with little ones at home and everything. So that, and then just really setting firm boundaries. So,
Mhm.
these are my set hours to work. I typically, like, if the kids are up and active and everything, I'm not going to get on my laptop because they flip out if they see me get on my laptop. But I will, like, if my daughter's taking a nap and my son is playing quietly, I may send a quick email or something like that. But outside of that, like, I typically try not to work when I'm like with the kids and
Mhm.
everything, just focus that time on them and everything. But I think again, it's just really looking at how you can simplify things in your business. So setting up those automations and different things like that. So like even like if somebody inquires about working with me, all of it's automated. They're going to get that response and the next steps, and I don't have to get on to do anything. So really looking at what you can simplify in your business and just take yourself out of the equation. I think it allows you to be able to work less so you can be the present mama you want to be.
Oh, I love that. And because I'm such like a tech person, I do want to hear. So what tech are you utilizing for some of your automations? Like when someone reaches out to inquire about working with you, what do you have and what are you using for all that automation?
So I past couple of years I've been using Dubsado, and unfortunately I have just been disappointed with all of the glitches and even when you like address support and then they're like, well, did you do this or it's this? And I'm like, but I'm telling you, like this workflow used to work and it's not working. So I've been in the process of switching over to Moxie, and I really like it. they have a lot of great features, not maybe as many customizations as Dubsado, which that was a little disappointing, but I really love the overall setup. It's very simple, it's very intuitive. Like I don't feel like I'm having to learn a whole new
Mhm.
software. So that's what I'm currently using. But yeah, it's all just automated. Like once I have stuff set up, literally is working for me. So between that and then I use ConvertKit. So I have like my email funnels set up through ConvertKit and everything. So yeah.
To get all your compliance updates done.
I did that. A lot of it I had done before, email Armageddon helped happen. But I think I just had to like do, I think it was like the D mark. But I got that all set up and finalized. And yeah, I'm good to go. I've been sending emails. My open rates haven't been impacted, thankfully. So
It's been an interesting ride this year. I've been doing a lot. I wasn't something I necessarily wanted to dive into, but
yeah.
because of how I support my clients, it was something that they needed support in. And so I went
Yes.
down a lot of rabbit holes of research and trainings and learned all the things and
Yes.
spent many, many hours doing lots and lots of email compliance updates.
Yes, yes. I've supported a few clients too, who they wanted to start leveraging email marketing, but they didn't have the email at their domain name, so we had to go through all of that. But yeah, it's been a crazy time with all the email stuff.
I want to talk a little bit about some of the mindset stuff that might have
Mhm.
come up when you were starting your business. And I'd love to know some like the fears and doubts you had and how you overcame them.
So I would say probably one of the biggest things that came up for me was when I started out as a VA, I still kind of went into it with that employee mindset, not really looking at it as me being a CEO working with another CEO. And honestly, what caused me to make that shift was I had my daughter, and life with two under two is really, really interesting and different. And so I had to make some major shifts in how I was running my business. So I had made the decision that I was not going to be available to my clients on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So that way I could just focus solely on my kids and, you know, kind of just have that break that I needed and everything. And for the most part, my clients were on board with it, except for one. She was very upset about it. Like she knew I had just had my second child and all of that. And it made me realize like I didn't need to ask permission. Like it really got me thinking, like, why did I start this business to begin with? And I started it so that way, yes, I could bring in income, but so I could stay home with my kids. So I didn't have to go back to a 9 to 5. And so I really just like kind of had that light bulb moment, so to speak. And I was like, I can do things differently. I get to decide, when I work and who I work with and different things like that. And just really learning how to set boundaries in my business. And so I think that like just really looking at like, well, when do I actually want to work? When do I actually want to be available to clients? How do I want to structure my days? What do I want to be able to do at this time versus that time? And just different things like that. And so, really learning how to step into that CEO role and own it and not be afraid to do it because it's, that confrontation, it's always hard. It's uncomfortable and everything. But just reminding myself that it's two CEOs having this conversation, and if the person is not okay with it, that's okay. We just may not be a good fit to work with each other. So I would say that was like the biggest thing. That, and then the other thing was too, is that before I had my daughter, just like having to worry about my son, I was able to get so much done while he was running around and different things like that, or he was napping and stuff. Well, you bring in a second baby and it looks way different. They're not going to be on the same nap schedule as much as you would like for them to be. It's just not going to happen.
Mhm.
And so I really had to learn how to be okay with slowing down as a mom of two, and being flexible, knowing that it's okay that things look different. It's okay that I'm doing things differently, and really had to kind of, like how we are talking about social media, take that step back from social media and not really looking at what other people were doing, because that comparison, that'll take you down a whole mindset drama path that you don't need to be on. And so I had to embrace my current season of life and know that it would not be this way forever. The kids are going to get older. Things are going to look different. My time and capacity will increase. But until then, I had to be realistic about what I was actually capable of doing, in this season of life.
I can relate to that so much. I mean, the juggle of like the two kids and the not
Yes.
getting on the nap schedule and just really giving yourself grace to go at
Mhm.
your own speed. It's not a race.
Yes.
And just knowing that I like for me, I know where I'm going. I still haven't sat down and done that whole like 2023 year in review that everyone talks about. I didn't have time. My kids were home.
Yes.
They were off school. We were traveling. We were sick. We then
Hmm.
like it's not the time for me to sit and reflect. I would love to, but it never is a reality any year. And I know that. And so I don't put the pressure on myself to
Hmm.
have this full blown review time and sit and spend a couple days reflecting. I'll do that maybe in a few years. I'll have the space and capacity for that. But for right
Yes.
now, I just ignore all that stuff coming in my inbox that talks about it. And no, I'm just not at that place because my kids are home and it's the
Hmm.
holidays and it is what it is.
Yeah.
So really knowing, like, I know what my big picture is. I know what I'm shooting for. Yeah, it might take
Hmm.
me 5 years to get there, but that's okay. I'm also raising little children who are getting bigger. My daughter, at the time of this recording, her birthday is actually tomorrow. My oldest will turn 8.
Oh.
And, I've been doing this now for 8 years. So, yeah, really just going at your own pace because I know I fall into that comparisonitis
It's so
often.
easy to do. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'll look at other people who either have older kids or they don't have children and like the amount that they get done and how they can put stuff out. I'm like, I don't have, like, as soon as my kids get home, computers off, weekends for
Yeah.
the most part, unless they're going with grandma somewhere, like, I'm out of capacity. For a long time, I would work after they went to bed. And I, after 2020, like, I did it for a number of years during like 2020, 2021. I was
Hmm.
getting up at 4 a.m. every day to have quiet time to get stuff done. I'd stay up late. My clients knew, like, if Laura's emailing, it's probably because the 2-year-old woke up and didn't get back to sleep, kind of thing. Um, but not that to expect me to be emailing at 5 in the morning. Of course, I'm also West Coast and they're East. I always work with a lot of East Coasters. So they're all three
Oh,
hours ahead of me. But yeah, really just having that flexibility and grace, of knowing that it'll all happen. It doesn't happen overnight.
yes, definitely.
We are getting close to our time. This has just flown by. I can sit and talk to you all day long, and I'm going
Oh,
to continue talking to you after this. But I
yes.
do have one question that I ask everyone who comes on the show, and that is, what is one piece of advice you would give to someone when they are growing and scaling their business that would help them be bolder, be louder, and make waves?
I would say is don't be afraid to be vulnerable and to share your beliefs and values. I feel like that is the best way to attract your dream clients, those people who are truly the best fit to work with you. I know it can be scary, especially like the vulnerability piece, but I promise you, it will make finding the right clients so much easier, when you just are able to freely do that in your content.
Oh, I love that. Andrea, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you, connect with you, get in your world?
Yeah, so I have my podcast. It's called Mama Turned Mompreneur. And then my website is mamaturnedmompreneur.com. And then I am somewhat on Instagram. And my handle is Mama Turned Mompreneur. So yeah, if you Google Mama Turned Mompreneur, you will find me.
Wonderful. And I will link all that up in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. This was such a fun conversation.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. Be sure to check out the show notes at lauracomark.com/podcast. And if you're ready to turn your website into a marketing machine, get more sales, save time, and simplify the back end of your business, grab my free resource, Power Integrations for your website. Head on over to lauracomark.com/power. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe. And also, I'll just love you forever if you leave me a review. It helps get this podcast in front of other people that can help inspire. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you next week. Bye now.